All right, so he's asking, how do I know that anything exists? Looking for this indisputed starting point for his system. And, he says, well, okay, we may look around us and just assume that things exist, right? I see things around me. I see the computer screen right now that I'm looking at as I'm looking at this PowerPoint. I heard the garbage truck drive by a little bit ago, just before I started recording. So I'm hearing things. Now I hear the sound of my own voice. I have my sense experience of the stuff around me that certainly seems like it's real. So I may assume that it's real. But is it indisputable that it's real? Or is it possible that I could be mistaken that what I'm seeing is real? So we have some other options before us. Well, perhaps the things that I'm experiencing right now are really just a dream. How do I know that it's not a dream? You've probably had dreams that are very realistic. I've had dreams that are quite realistic. Those dreams where you just kind of wake up and think, oh, wait, did that really happen? And then you have to kind of get back in your life and in your head and start to come to a realization of, wait a minute, that wasn't real, that was a dream. You get these very realistic dreams. So how do I know that it isn't just that I'm not living in a dream right now? And yeah, I know people actually have answers to this where they would say, you can't read well in a dream. There are certain things you can't do in a dream. You can't pinch your nose and stop breathing in a dream. And I don't know how well those kind of things actually work in dreams. But, perhaps that's the case of most dreams. But what if this dream is the one exception to that? How would I know? Can I make a universal judgment that I can't read well in dreams? I can say my experience is generally true, but not always. So I can't definitively prove that my existence in my life right now is not a dream. But we have that's not the only solution either. So it might not be that it's a dream. Perhaps the world was, and I mentioned this before, perhaps the world was created 5 minutes ago. And this is something that I can't really prove. I can't prove to you the world wasn't created 5 minutes ago. How am I going to do that? I can't take a time machine and travel back 6 minutes ago to prove that it existed then. And even if I were to grab a time machine and take you back in a time machine to 6 minutes ago, how do I know that actually existed before and it wasn't just created afterwards as it was traveling in my time machine? There's no way to actually prove that. So perhaps the world is brand new and all of the things that I take for granted in my life were just implanted in my head. They're just implanted memories. So they're just, all the memories of my childhood and the things that I did and everything about my family, it's all just been implanted in my head and it feels real to me, but it's not any more real than a fictional narrative, than a novel or a video game story or a TV show or something else. Or we could think of the idea that you're insane. You've got mental problems. We know that it's possible for people with certain mental issues to see things that aren't there. And I think of being a kid in cartoons, there was always the scene where somebody's in a desert and they see the mirage, right? And they see a cart that's full of sodas to give out to people that are thirsty when you're kind of delusional. Now, I don't know how much the mirage thing actually works, but at least to some extent, our minds are able to make up things that we think are real. Here's a great example of this is in recovered memory therapy. This is for a long time, or for a time at least, it was a common practice for some psychologists to use hypnotism as a way to recover memories of childhood that were suppressed. Well, that's led to a lot of interesting results. People started to remember things like, alien abductions. This is how that phenomenon became really popular. And, SRA, if you know what that is, and some other things, that these things discovered that were recovered in these memory therapies, people began to realize are actually not really true. You're basically, when you're hypnotizing somebody, you end up kind of creating these memories by the questions you're asking. But oftentimes the people can actually believe that those memories are real, even if they're not actually real. They didn't experience those things. So you can create trauma that never existed, which is kind of a horrible thing. So recovered memory therapy, and yeah, I know that there are a few people who still practice it, but the majority of the psychiatric profession recognizes that there's a danger in doing that because, well, maybe perhaps you can recover some memories. I mean, I don't know, and it's not really quite clear that you can. But even if you can, it's also become pretty clear that you can implant false memories in people's heads. Okay, so perhaps that's what happens. Well, Nowadays, the answer to this probably would be like, well, maybe we're all living in a simulation, and that's very popular. Elon Musk likes to say we're living in a simulation. All sorts of people like to say that reality is just a simulation. We're just in a video game or something. And so in the fullest sense, it's not actually real. Now, Descartes goes through a bunch of different options here. And eventually he says, well, maybe there is, even if you can say it's not a dream, because even if you can be like, okay, well, this logically doesn't make sense with a dream. What if, and you can go to these kind of wild scenarios. He says, what if there's this evil genie that's manipulating your head? What if there is this just monstrous demonic creature that is just torturing you just for fun and wants you to experience all of these things as real, but they're not actually real? And this evil genie is much more powerful than you are. And if he's much more powerful than you are, he can make things seem more real than they are in real life because he's that powerful and he's that manipulative and crazy. So perhaps all of us are really just being manipulated by an evil genie. And perhaps there are not all of us. There is just one of us, and that is Descartes. That's what he's reasoning in his own head. Okay. So he's saying, well, how do I know that I am not being manipulated to believe in this external world around me by some kind of evil creature? Well, in this process, as he's asking all of these different kinds of questions and going through scenarios, he comes to the conclusion that, well, there is one thing that I know. And that is that in these questions and in this questioning that I'm doing, he says, I know that I exist because I know that I'm the one that's doubting my existence. So this is where you have that famous phrase, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Now, sometimes philosophers just summarize this as the cogito because it's so famous, it's so well known. And so he says, if I'm doubting, one thing I do know is that there is doubting taking place, so I am actually doubting. If there is doubting, there has to be a doubter, and I'm a doubter. Now, that conclusion, and this is because Descartes sees this as this indisputable foundation. This is what he's looking for, right? This sure, objective, clear, absolute truth foundation to move forward from. David Hume is going to challenge that and say, how do you know? That doesn't prove that you exist. That doesn't follow. All you're saying is that there is a sensation of doubting happening. You don't have a way to prove that there is actually an I that is doubting. You just have the sense that there is an I. You just have a sense that you're an I. But perhaps the sense of a unified I or a unified self is no more real than your sense of the external world. The only thing you can know is that there is a sensation of doubting. But you can't come to a conclusion that there is a self that's actually involved in the sensation. So that's going to be the criticism of Hume, and that's how you end up with this kind of total skepticism. But Descartes thinks that he has found this clear foundation. So we see then that the foundation of all knowledge becomes our own self-knowledge. So knowledge then begins for Descartes with knowledge of the self. It is knowledge I am, I exist in my own experience, and then I move forward from my own internal self-knowledge toward the knowledge of the world.